Remember that guy? For most of us, that's the last time anyone told us anything about how a law actually gets made. Washington's legislative session is happening right now. So we're going to take a tour through how a bill becomes a law, and we'll take Roger out too. So I used to think that in the legislative session, all these bills get filed and they're just kind of milling around. Legislators are debating them for months, and then finally they vote on all the bills, and all you need is most of the legislators to support your bill, and bam, it's through. Turns out it's more like a whole bunch of hurdles. Way before a bill gets to a vote on the floor, all of the bills have to go through a whole bunch of steps first. And actually, most of them will wipe out somewhere along the way before they get to a floor vote. Which means that if we want to pass any bills, and yeah, we want to pass some really big changes, we have to track where they're at every step along the way. The roadmap to becoming a law actually looks something like this. Let's go through these and see what they are. The first step of a bill becoming a law actually happens way before the session even starts. Over the summer is when the representatives and senators are figuring out what their priorities are going to be for the year. They're meeting with community members and organizations, they're holding town halls, and they're finding out what matters to folks. And that's where they need to decide not just what's a good idea, but what they're actually going to really prioritize to work and push through over other good ideas. When a rep or a senator decides to sponsor a bill, that means that they're going to take point on writing it, on filing it. They'll be the main advocate who will push it through the session. But when the session starts, they actually file it. They physically print it out and put it into this thing called a hopper. Not that hopper. They're going to file it in either the House of Representatives or the Senate. That one that it starts out in is called the Chamber of Origin. It has to pass all the way through that one and then has to go through the other one too. This is where those hurdles come up, the committees. Every bill has to go through multiple committees, and the committees are made up of some legislators who are assigned to them. The smaller ones might have 6 or so members, and then some of them might even have 20 or 30 members. In every committee, the members will debate a bill, they might have some public hearings, and then they're going to vote on it. They might vote to pass it through, they might vote it down and it dies there. They might not even bother to bring it up for a vote, and then the bill is gone. They might amend it too, which sometimes means watering the bill down. Whatever committee the bill is in, that's the only committee that matters right then, because the bill could die there and then everything else is kaput. And the committee members who are there are the only legislators who matter at that time. What we have to do is we have to track a bill's progress through every single committee. We need to keep track of when those committee hearings are, and then you can sign in online before those hearings, pro or con for a bill, which is super easy. You can sign up to testify, either virtually or in person, to support or go against a bill. And then also we need to know who the committee members are. We can call them, email them, go talk to their staffers. So real quick, here's what some of the committees are. The first committee they'll go through is something topical, like the Housing Committee or Transportation, Education, whatever's the best fit for that bill. If it passes through that one, the next committee is all about money. The House one is called Appropriations, and the Senate it's called Ways and Means, basically the same thing. So that's where they're like, okay, if this bill passes, is it going to cost money? Like if it's a program, where's the funding going to come from? Do we need to start a new tax to pay for this bill? Or do we appropriate the money from another source? And obviously in Washington, we have one of the most regressive tax systems in the country. So working people are paying way more in taxes than some of the wealthiest people in the world who live here. A lot of bills die here because no one wants to change the tax code in a way that would hurt the ultra wealthy. So if that committee agrees on how a bill should get funded and passes it, then the last committee is called Rules. And the Rules Committee is where things get real because each of the members has a limited number of bills that they can pull or put up for a vote. And so a lot of bills die here just because they don't get prioritized. They don't even get voted on here at all. After that, we are done with committees and the bill needs to be put up for a floor vote. In the House and the Senate, the Democrats and Republicans have chosen a handful of leaders, or party leadership, and they get together in caucus. And the majority leadership, that's usually the Democrats in Washington, they get to decide which things to schedule for a floor vote. And they'll actually usually only schedule things for a vote if they're pretty confident it's going to pass without too much debate. So finally, the bill goes up for a floor vote. Sometimes someone will flip last minute, but usually by this point, you can be pretty confident that the bill will pass. If it makes its way through the first chamber, congratulations, but you're only halfway done. If the bill started out in the House, it has to go through the Senate or vice versa. And sometimes the second chamber might pass some edits to the bill, and then you have to do this whole process to reconcile the differences. And that can actually be a pretty dangerous time, because if there are a ton of differences between the two bills and the chambers can't agree on them, it might die there. If it passes both of the chambers, then the governor has to sign it. And he usually signs bills that are passed by his own party, but sometimes he'll veto parts of a bill that don't fit into his budget. Side note, Washington does its budgeting every 2 years, and this is a budget year. So, did Jay sign your bill? Congratulations! Your bill grew up and now it's a big shiny law. Hopefully you made it through the legislative session without too many migraines. I know this sounds like a lot, because it is. It is a long, convoluted, confusing process, and it's just not realistic for us as individuals to try to do effective advocacy on our own. We can't all figure out what are the most important bills in a session, what's most likely to pass, what's strategic to focus on, what stage a bill is at, who's the right person to talk to and when. So that's why Washington Community Alliance has the Tally. It's a newsletter that tracks a handful of priority bills, things that will make a really big difference in Washington, like housing affordability, taxes on the ultra wealthy, independent investigations of police, improving the Washington Voting Rights Act, and more. And tons of other community organizations do the same thing with their priority bills. So follow along with some of these. They'll make it super easy to keep up with where a bill is at. Sign in support of a bill. They'll help you to write a testimony to show up at a public hearing, and more. Because we can do a lot more in community than we can alone. Thanks for going on this walk with me and Roger through the legislative session. See you around.